With his nascent soul trapped within the lightning pool, every single passing second was an extremely grueling one for Han Li, and 7 days felt like 7 years. On this day, a resounding boom rang out in the night sky, and a vast expanse of golden lightning surged through the heavens. It was only for an instant, but it illuminated the entire night sky to be as bright as day. Following this flash of golden lightning, the golden lightning pool also faded away, completely vanishing into nothingness. Han Li's nascent soul slowly descended out of the heavens with a smile on its face, and its entire body was radiating dazzling golden light, giving it the appearance of a miniature golden sun from afar. It slowly landed on the top of Han Li's head, then looked around for a moment before vanishing into Han Li's head. Han Li's eyes instantly sprang open, and 2 radiant beams of golden light erupted out of his eyes, extending for around 3 feet in front of him, presenting a rather peculiar sight to behold. After just a few blinks, the beams of golden light gradually began to recede until they vanished altogether, but there was still a very bright gleam in his eyes. All of a sudden, he summoned his mantra-treasured axis, and it flew around him until it was situated in front of him, hovering in midair while revolving incessantly. The axis was shimmering brightly, while the time Dao runes on its surface were flashing incessantly. All 360 of the time Dao runes on its surface had already recovered, and at this moment there were as many as 3 time law threads wrapped around the axis. A hint of elation emerged in Han Li's eyes upon seeing this. During that brief moment of heightened sensitivity immediately after consuming the Golden Soul pill, he had been struck by an indescribable feeling, one that granted him a hint of enlightenment when it came to the power of time laws. At the time, he had already felt the time law thread in his body beginning to undergo a transformation, but a golden immortal stage breakthrough was imminent, so he didn't have time to dwell on the feeling. During the few days that his nascent soul had been baptized within the lightning pool, he had constantly been in a state of excruciating torment, but at the same time, that same indescribable feeling emerged once again, triggering some minute changes in the power of time within his body. Before he knew it, he had already manifested 2 more time law threads. In order to manifest his first time law thread, he had gone to extreme lengths, leaving no stone unturned, and even going as far as to directly swallow the spirit liquid produced by the heaven-controlling vial, but still to no avail. In the end, it was only by refining a time Dao pill that he was able to attain the time law thread, so he was naturally ecstatic to have manifested 2 more so easily. However, now that the nascent soul refinement process had concluded, he was unable to return to that mystical state of enlightenment again. Han Li heaved a faint sigh as he made a beckoning motion, and the 3 time law threads instantly flew toward him from the mantra-treasured axis before wrapping themselves around his finger. By injecting his spiritual sense into them, he could immediately feel bursts of formidable time law fluctuations. Right at this moment, a burst of blinding light suddenly emerged over the mantra-treasured axis, and the heaven-controlling vial abruptly flew out of Han Li's robes on its own, hovering in mid-air as it also began to glow as radiantly as a green sun. The 2 were resonating with one another, and both were giving off bursts of formidable fluctuations. All of a sudden, the 3 time law threads wrapped around Han Li's finger shot forth through the air, hurtling toward the heaven-controlling vial like a trio of arrows before vanishing into it in a flash. A dull thump rang out, and the spirit patterns on the surface of the heaven-controlling vial flashed as the green light it was radiating became even more blinding to behold. At the same time, the vial itself was also rapidly expanding, and it didn't take long before Tai had swelled to the size of a millstone. Countless green runes surged out of the surface of the vial, while a green cloud gathered within the vial, forming a violently churning green vortex. Bursts of special aura fluctuations were emanating out of the vial incessantly, while the green cloud within it transformed into a thick pillar of green light that tore through the space before it, then manifested that same strange, translucent wall of light that Han Li had seen on several past occasions. "Here it comes again!" Before long, The vortex had already swelled to the size of a house, and a burst of tremendous suction force abruptly surged out from within it, enveloping his entire body. His soul was instantly sucked out of his body before vanishing into the vortex in a flash. Han Li felt a sharp pain in his head, immediately following which his vision faded, and he lost all consciousness. In the next instant, he felt as if he could hear a loud commotion ringing out around him, coupled with the sound of howling wind. He hurriedly opened his eyes, and only then did he discover that he was situated high up in the sky and was flying rapidly through the air, while the commotion was ringing out from behind him. Given the last experience in which his soul had been placed into the body of that old man, Han Li already knew what to expect this time, so he wasn't overly panicked, and he continued flying through the air while looking down to examine his own body. To his surprise, his entire body was a shimmering golden colour, and he was very short and stubby. On top of that, he was clutching a green storage bracelet in his arms. It seemed that he wasn't a cultivator. Instead, he was a nascent soul that was frantically fleeing for its life. A wry smile appeared on Han Li's face upon seeing this. While it was true that Ling Yunzi had been on the brink of death, at least his physical body was still intact. Having said that, even though this was only a nascent soul, it was far more powerful than Ling Yunzi had been. Han Li attempted to recollect some of this nascent soul's memories, and he immediately felt as if a rumbling thunderclap had erupted in his mind, causing his head to ring incessantly. A series of fragmented memories and indescribable emotions instantly surged into his mind, and the sensory overload was so immense that he almost fell out of the sky. Thankfully, this sensation only lasted an instant, and he was quickly able to stabilize himself again. But as a result, he had also been stopped cold in his tracks. Instead of continuing to flee, he turned around to look behind him with a peculiar look on his face. In the distance, large chunks of the heavens and the earth were encompassed within spherical light barriers of different colors, and even though he was already very far away from them, he could still sense extremely formidable energy fluctuations emanating from the light barriers. Those were dozens, perhaps even close to 100 formidable spirit domains that were giving off tremendous law power fluctuations, and these spirit domains were either overlapping or clashing against one another in a spectacular sight to behold. This is the infernal Frost Immortal Palace. At this point, Han Li had already figured out the identity of the nascent soul that he had possessed. It belonged to a man by the name of Jin Hai, and he had once been a golden immortal stage disciple of the Boundless Sword sect. The nascent soul had just fled from the sect, and the memories that Han Li had recalled were quite chaotic and jumbled, with most of them containing images of horrific battles that seemed to have taken place quite recently. Only after some extensive contemplation was Han Li able to extrapolate some things from these fragmented memories. It seemed that for some reason, the Reincarnation Palace's forces had suddenly stormed into the infernal Frost Immortal Palace 2 days ago, and even though the Immortal Palace was prepared for the invasion, they were still unable to keep the enemy at bay. As a subsidiary power of the Immortal Palace, the Boundless Sword sect naturally had to make a final stand alongside the Immortal Palace's forces. They were planning to unleash the Sea of Swords on the enemy, even though doing so would completely ruin the foundation of the sect. But right as they resorted to this plan, an enemy, High Zenith Stage Jade Immortal, unleashed their spirit domain to trap the entire sect. The spirit domain was filled with a type of unidentifiable law power that was able to suppress the vast sword chi within the Sea of Swords, thereby preventing the Boundless Sword sect from using it in the battle. The disciples of the Boundless Sword sect had no choice but to form an array to force their way out of the Jade Immortal's spirit domain. But after that, they found themselves right in the midst of the battle between the cultivators of the Immortal Palace and the Reincarnation Palace. Jin Hai's martial brothers perished one after another, with some managing to flee in the form of their nascent souls, while others perished altogether. After inadvertently stumbling into the spirit domain of a cultivator at the pinnacle of the Golden Immortal stage, Jin Hai's luck finally ran out and he also met his demise. In the instant before he perished, he detonated his own bonded flying sword using a secret technique, and only then was his nascent soul able to escape. Even so, his nascent soul was already severely wounded and on the brink of disintegrating. If it weren't for the influx of Hanli's spiritual sense, it would have most likely already completely disintegrated into nothingness. Why did the Reincarnation Palace attack the Infernal Frost Immortal Palace? Does this have something to do with the fall of the Infernal Frost Immortal Palace? With all these questions in his mind, Hanli turned his gaze to his left, and sure enough, the faint projection of his mantra-treasured axis was hovering there. The Time Dao runes on its surface were flashing with semi-transparent light, and around a dozen of them had already faded. Hanli was rather perplexed to see this. At this point, he had definitely already been in the wall of light for at least 30 seconds, so 30 Time Dao runes should have been snuffed out at a minimum. So why was that not the case? Could it be? A thought occurred to Hanli, and he began to scrutinize the mantra-treasured axis intently with an unblinking gaze. Moments later, his brows unfurrowed and a hint of elation appeared on his face. He discovered that each Time Dao rune was now able to last 3 seconds before fading away instead of 1. Perhaps this was because he now possessed 3 time law threads. If the accumulation of each additional time law thread really could extend the duration of time that each Time Dao rune could last, then as he continued to manifest more time law threads in the future, this duration would most likely only continue to extend. With that in mind, Hanli couldn't help but wonder if some other changes would take place once the number of time law threads in his possession passed certain thresholds, if such thresholds truly did exist.